Treasury yield saw a big move lower on Friday as there is some clarity and possibly some resolution to trade. And we saw a lot of those sellers from maybe over the last week or so gather back in their bonds and were big buyers. I think at this point the headlines have been dictating trade in equities and in other areas, haven't really affected the bond market as much. Well, today we got some headlines that things were all going great. The trade deal was going through. Phase one deal would eliminate some or most of the tariffs that were supposed to go into place, and they would reduce other areas. And the market initially sold off, and then it rallied because there came back, obviously, the what if started popping up, and there was a lot of resolution in certain areas, but still a lot of question marks. And I think at this point, the U.S. trade deal with China remains uncertain. Now, there's some certainty in some areas, but it remains uncertain, and that will continue to find buyers, continue to find those that were sellers that were looking for a big move lower. That just didn't happen. And with year end on the horizon, I think at this point it's cover your bases, look to minimize risks, and I think being short bonds going into year end might be a bit of a question mark as to where things go from here. But we did see that held the range, that 170 to 190 range. We did breach that 190 level briefly, but I think at this point you can still hang on to that 170 to 190 range. And as the close on Friday came to, we were hovering just above the midpoint, again, that magnet point right near 182. So again, declines in yield today, despite the fact that we did get some positive news on the trade talks between the U.S. and China. Market volatility, yeah, it was eerily higher as we came into this week. Remember last Friday we talked, it was a close, we had higher volatility going into a weekend. Yes, that's rare, but we did have some big events this week. Not only China-U.S. trade continuation, but we had FOMC meeting, we had an ECB meeting, we had a UK election. All this kind of got overshadowed by what was going on with the U.S. and China. And I think at this point we saw big declines in volatility down near, not to year-to-date lows, but certainly as close as we've been in a long time. So certainly a big sigh of relief from the market, as I think those shorts that came in a few weeks ago to push yields higher got out. Everything goes back to the midpoint. It's kind of the comfort zone for the market. So volatility right now hovering near the lows as resolution seems to be gaining some momentum. And if that can continue, look for vols to go even lower as we head into year end. And lastly, what do we have ahead? Yeah, we'll continue to watch trade. How are they going to tweak it? What's going to possibly come about that could affect the economies, not only here, but also in China? And I think at this point that remains center stage. We do have more central bank meetings next week. Bank of Japan and Bank of England will both meet. The Bank of England meeting should be very interesting following this week's UK election win by Boris Johnson. So I think at this point, that could be really the only interesting thing we have coming out next week on the event calendar. But again, we'll continue to watch China-U.S. trade. How is it going to be tweaked? Is there going to be talk of a phase two reduction or change? At this point, the phase one reductions were taken very positively, but if you look over in the equity market, not so positively that they would send stocks to the moon. They did have kind of a tepid day for what we've seen all week as rallying stocks on positive and mediocre news. So at this point, the bond market's still waiting for confirmation as it trades the midpoint of the range as we head into year end, and that could bring about its own risks here as you look to mitigate risks heading into year end and into first quarter next year, when there are a lot of question marks about the economy and the Federal Reserve and what they might need to do, whether or not they want to. So Treasury yields right now hovering the range heading into the weekend.